Hello. So, while I was out on vacation, a misfortune befell me. I made a classic mistake when you know you're going to be out of town and there's going to be a session played in your absence. Always leave your character sheet. I did not. And pretty much when anyone's out of town, if you're in a campaign where there's potential for death, there is a higher chance that your character is going to die. One, if you're not there, and two, percentage goes even higher if you forget to leave your character sheet. So, needless to say, while I was in Boston, New York City on my vacation, my fighter died. He was a Viking archetype. I actually really enjoyed playing him, but now I have to make a new character, so the video I'm putting together here is kind of the process I go about when I design a new character. Now, as you can see, I just have engineering paper because I don't actually have any extra character sheets printed out. I thought I had some extra fighter character sheets. The character sheets I like to use, I did browse. This is for Pathfinder, just in case you didn't know. The character sheets I like to use are produced by Happy Camper. I have no idea who this person is. But I found them for free online several years ago, well, several being maybe like 2 or 3, and I really like their character sheet. It's got a bunch of stuff where you can fill out. It's got a couple extra. I got an example here from my Magus. I shouldn't say they have character sheets pretty much for every class, but the feats are all set up nice, the equipment's set up really nice, and I just really like them. They're fantastic character sheets. So when I get an opportunity, I'm going to print those out again, but I haven't had a chance yet. So, a couple things right off the bat. You got to make sure you have all your books. I'm making a fighter, so Ultimate Combat is needed. Advanced Player's Guide, of course. Ultimate Equipment, because you really need this book if you're in a Pathfinder campaign, because it has everything. It's got all the magic items from pretty much all the books. It's fantastic. And of course, Player's Handbook. You have to have it. It's, more important than this one. You have to have this one at a minimum. Pretty much, archetypes are not in this book, but pretty much everything you need to just do like a base class is in this book, so you need it. So, I know it is a 20-point buy. I'm not probably going to bore you with how I figure out all the points, but it's a 20-point buy. I'm going to be a level 5, because that's pretty much what everyone else in the party's at. So, that I get 2 traits. Traits are something Pathfinder has. They started in the Advanced Player's Guide, and there's a couple extra traits per, if you're in an adventure path. There's some traits that are involved in adventure paths. Advanced Race Guide, which I actually do not have, but my buddy whose house we do play at has it. He's got everything. There's a couple traits in there depending on what race you play. There's some more specific ones. I tend to stick with just the regular run-of-the-mill generic ones. You have your I guess they're magic based. You have basically social, combat, and kind of like magic divine kind of thing. And you can't have 2 of social, you can't have 2 of combat, so you have to mix them up a bit. I'm a fighter, so I generally try to take a trait where my armor check penalty is 1 less, because that's always nice. And bullied or reactionary, just so I'm better at certain things. So, but basically, how I start my campaigns is I come up with a concept. So I already know I'm going to be a fighter, and I'm going to be a 2-weapon fighter, just because, why not? I can be, so I'm going to be a 2-weapon fighter. But this is where I came up with the name. My guy's name is going to be Comm Red. Like comrade. So he's actually going to fight with a hammer and sickle. So he's going to use a sickle to trip you, and then he's going to hit you in the head with a hammer. I think it's going to be a fun, interesting concept. That's how I pretty much start all my characters. I come up with a concept, and then I create it. I don't create it, then the concept kind of evolves. The concept is the first thing that happens. So because I know I'm going to be a fighter, that's the limiting factor right there, what kind of class I'm going to be. I'm going to be a fighter. Because in this campaign, that's what my character was, and he was kind of needed for that role, so I'm just going to continue with the role like that, just change it up a bit. Instead of being a raging fighter, that's what a Viking archetype is, I'm going to be a 2-weapon fighter that focuses on tripping and then hitting you while you're down. I have played a similar character to this before, Though he fought with a halberd, and it was in a 3-5 campaign, Castle Ravenloft campaign actually, and he was incredibly effective at that. But this one's going to be a little bit more specialized. I'm going to give him some kind of flavorful merc kind of personality, in it for the money, in it for the glory, what have you, which kind of fits with the campaign we're in for Mummy's Mask, where they open up the necropolis for exploration, and a whole bunch of people from all over the place descend on Wat T, which is the town, and then basically mayhem ensues. So I already know what I'm going to be. Human. I'm probably going to be an outsider. I think everyone else in the campaign has decided they're from the area where the campaign setting happens. You don't have to be. Granted, I could choose to be anyway, but I'm going to be a two-weapon fighter. So we're going to have to focus on basically the most important thing for that, and I'm a human, so I get extra feats, which is very important for a fighter. So basically, you're going to use your handbooks here, and I'll come up with... I'm basically just going to focus on the feats for this. Granted, I could have a 2 to 3 hour video of me actually making a full character, but that would be incredibly boring, I would imagine. I mean, some people might be interested. I would watch it, but I spent a ridiculous amount of time creating characters anyway. But because I have this theme, I know exactly what he's going to do. The most important thing for this fighter is, of course, going to be the feats. So I want to focus on the two-weapon fighting. There happens to be a nice, on page 116 in your player's handbook. Core rulebook is what it's called. Core rulebook, not player's handbook. I keep calling it player's handbook because that's what D&D was. So you have a whole tree of two-weapon fighting skills, two-weapon fighting feats that I'm going to be taking. So when I start divvying up my points for my point buys for my stats, it's very important to know what feats you're going to go, especially if you're kind of coming up with kind of a niche fighter like this, because two-weapon fighting requires a dex of 15. Had I set my stats up prior to looking over the feats that I want to take for this fighter, I would more have likely skimmed a bit on the dex, so it's very nice to have a high enough dex. And then, you got your two-weapon fighting, so that just reduces the penalties. And then you come down two-weapon rend and all that other good stuff. So that's going to help with the two-weapon fighting. However, I'm also going to be a tripper, because sickle is a trip weapon. So I'm going to want to look into feats that allow me to do trips and all that good stuff. And I can see already that combat expertise is the feat that I would need. You need an int of 13 for that, so it's also another feat that is very important that you read the fine print before you set up your stats. So I'm actually, this is the reverse order I do it. I usually do all my stats first, but knowing the feats is a little bit more important because I don't really do two-weapon fighting. I don't do two-weapon fighting. I've never really done that ever. And combat expertise I've rarely ever used, so it's a good idea that I'm actually looking at the feats first as opposed to setting up my stats, because I probably would have skipped 2 now stat categories, dex and int, that actually need them to be at certain levels so I can actually do this. But you have right off the bat, so after combat expertise, I can then get improved trip and then greater trip eventually, which is very nice. So I'm going to be going that route for this fighter. I'm going to gear him up. I'm starting at level 5, so there's a certain amount of wealth associated with that. I don't have to start with the meager amount of a fighter would get, so I can actually have decent weapons and all that other stuff. PC starting off by level, page 399. Would never have remembered that. So for a 5th level character, I can have 10,500 gold. So I'm a fighter. My dex is going to be rather relatively high, so I probably will not go with a high armor, just because it's kind of counterintuitive to the kind of archetype in quotes, if you will, of what I'm going to be going for. I might actually look in here to see if there's an archetype, and if I actually find an archetype, I'll probably list it in the description of this video. But that's basically the route I'm going to go. I'm going to get him good weapons. I'll probably go with a lighter armor so he's a little bit quicker. Because he's the two-weapon fighting. I think there's some other things in here where you get 2 weapons. You might be able to basically use one kind of as like a pairing device. So your AC can benefit from that. That might be a specific archetype, but I do believe there is one that is similar to that. And then basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to write them all down here. So I essentially have my character completely filled out, and then I will download and print my Happy Camper fighter sheets, and then fill out the character sheet appropriately. So that's kind of a quick rundown of how I get going when I start my characters. I come up with my concept and then build, starting with the stats, kind of build down. On the character sheet they have, as you can see, typical Pathfinder character sheet. I don't know if you'll see this, but they start with stats up top, and then you get all your hit points, your AC, and all your weapons, all your saves, and all that other good stuff. This one I actually went with a very different route. Never really looked at feats first. Glad I did, because I know I would have been skimping some of my stats. So I need to have a dex of 15 and an int of 13 in order to get those feats that I want. So I'm going to basically start there, start playing with the feats, make sure that I have the feat trees correct, make sure I have all the requisite stats set correctly, and then kind of play around with it. Fighter, I'm going to need good strength. Most people typically when they need to kind of sack a stat in order to get a couple extra points for other stuff, it's charisma. This guy will not be an exception to that rule. I don't need charisma really for anything. So I'm going to basically be skimping on that in order to get a couple points. I'm not going to skimp too bad. I might leave it as a 10 because that's the base for Pathfinder. I may go down to an 8 or a 9 just to get 1 or 2 extra points to put for other priority stats. Human, so I get a +2 to basically any one stat at the end, so that's always important to keep in mind. And that's basically it. I will try to, after I get this done, I will probably take a... you're probably not going to be... You might be interested in all the feats that I decided to choose, so what I'll do is at the end of this video, once I'm finished creating the character, and actually, because I'm not going to be able to post this tonight, so I'll probably post it tomorrow or on Saturday. But I'll have a couple pictures of what my character sheets actually look like. So, if you look at it and you want to maybe give me some feedback, or maybe some combination of feats that I missed, feel free to leave comment in the video to this, or comment on the blog, or on my blog where this is going to be posted. Those would be appreciated. I think I know quite a bit about Pathfinder, but I know I don't know everything, and there are several combinations of feats that I know I'm going to be missing. So if you're out there and you know of a better way to set up the feats, definitely let me know. I will appreciate the feedback, and until next time.